Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker, your host of That Girl the Podcast. I'm an author, performer, 2-time Emmy Award winner, human relationship specialist, and founder of the wellness website loveyouevenmore.com. Each week, I bring on inspiring people and experts in their field to have powerful, motivational, and enlightened conversations about relationships, self-development, and how you can live your most authentic life. Follow us for daily updates on myself and the podcast at That Girl the Podcast and at Jackie Brubaker on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and our Patreon page. While you're at it, make sure to check out my new wellness website, loveyouevenmore.com. If you're wanting to dig into developing more self-worth, be healthier about relationships, and learn how to date smarter, go to loveyouevenmore.com and follow us on Instagram at loveyouevenmore. Welcome, Janice Formichella, to That Girl, the podcast. Janice has actually been on the show before for dating and relationship advice and breakup advice in particular. But today we're kind of shifting gears and we're going to talk about her journey in the Mormon Church and leaving the Mormon Church. A lot of stuff has been said about the Mormon Church, especially recently. There's been a lot of different shows out there, a lot of talk throughout the years about this very controversial church and people's opinions of it and people leaving it. So we're going to talk all about your history, your leaving, and where you're at now. So thank you for coming on to talk about this. I'm very excited to talk to you. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I am a breakup and dating coach, but I'm also an ex-Mormon with kind of, all of our stories are so unique and everyone has a crazy story.
Yes.
Mine is for sure. And it was such a huge part of my life, leaving and growing up in it, that I appreciate that I get to share my story with others from time to time. So thank you for your interest.
I'm so excited to have you on. So let's just talk about, because we've kind of skimmed the surface of your history with it, but your family is very deep in the Mormon Church, like pioneer days. So talk about sort of what it was like growing up as a kid and being told about your heritage and about what we believe in and sort of what that felt like as a child first.
Sure. And yes, I believe we're 6 generations now of Mormons. And so I am from pioneer stock, meaning that, my ancestors came across the plains and
They're
settled
sturdy
Utah.
People.
Yes, for sure. We still are very, strong work ethic, very, resilient, very, set in our ways, and possibly because of, this heritage of mine. So I had ancestors who did found Utah. Polygamous background as well, which is something that I think is super interesting about my family. And I was actually born in Utah, which is, for whatever reason, not something that I mention often, but, that's where my parents met. And however, I consider myself to be a Mesa Mormon because my parents did move us to Arizona when I was very, very young. So I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, which some of your listeners may not know that outside of Utah, it's believed that the Mesa area has, the largest population of Mormons per capita. And so I definitely grew up with mostly Mormons around me. I hardly had any ex-Mormon friends, for sure. I think, though, that it didn't completely hit me that my family was a little different until I was in kindergarten. And
That's
that
early.
Is very young. Yeah, I know, but I should phrase that differently. I realized for the first time. And that is because Mormons are very strict about keeping the Sabbath. On Sunday, we don't do anything. And I was invited to a birthday party when I was about 5, and it was meant to be on a Sunday. And so, I go home with the invitation and my parents had to tell me that I couldn't go. And, I was absolutely devastated. And then from about then on out, I really only had non-Mormons in my life very sporadically. All of our healthcare providers, for instance, were LDS, and my family was very, very active. And I actually even went to a high school that was run by a group of Mormon ex-homeschoolers who then started a school that I went to.
Oh, wow. So just it is
Mhm.
ingrained in
Yes.
everything.
Yeah, very much so. It was really the only
Wow.
thing that I knew, and definitely as far as what we were told we believe, this was we went to church, multiple times a week, and I think one of the things that I grew up with was just kind of this sense, or at least being told to develop the sense that we are definitely the one true church, and
Mhm.
that everybody else either isn't aware of us or hasn't accepted the gospel yet. But that's, part of our mission is to help others accept it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's hard, as a kid, personally speaking. I just remember when I was up, I think in kindergarten as well, actually being like, I went to Sunday school for the first time because the school I was going to was like you had to go, and I'm like, oh, okay. But again, I'm like 5 or 6. I'm not really that old, I'm like pretty young. But I remember going to Sunday school and my little Sunday school teacher teaching me about different, like a story in the Bible, and let's just say it was I don't know, the parting of the Red Seas or something, or
Okay, that's a good
Noah's,
one. That's a good one. I
right,
like that one.
Noah's Ark or something. And I was like, and I really do remember this, like this little sassy child. I was like, yeah, but that didn't actually happen, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just a story. And I remember her saying, no, that happened. That's the miracle of God. And I'm like, but no, 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 no. Like that's impossible. So I think sometimes for kids, they can be aware of like something isn't quite right. And I would also like to just say, as we're starting this conversation, like I very deeply believe in God. I'm just not religious. I'm very,
Yeah.
very spiritual, and it's a huge part of my existence, but not religious. So, okay. So, yeah, the Sunday thing, that does suck. That
Mm-hmm.
really sucks.
Yeah, Sunday, and then also once you kind of get begin your initiation into adulthood, you start going also on Wednesday nights, and then there's all sorts of activities during the week as well. So yeah, like I said, it was really my entire life. Not to mention that I did go to the school as well.
Yeah.
And I did kind of take it for granted that I would do it forever. However, when I was maybe in the very beginning of the initiation, like 12 or 13, I did start to feel a lot more cynical about things than I noticed my peers were.
Mhm.
And then also I noticed that I always had this really strong desire to have a career, which I know for certain, at least my experience was the other girls around me, I didn't hear them saying those things. And so I had seeds planted from a pretty young age that something was a little off, was my experience.
Let's definitely talk about the difference between men and women in this church, because this is a big thing. This is a big part of why people leave, and a big part of why there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of different aspects of it, and we're going to cover it. So why don't you explain quickly too, if you're just jumping into this podcast and you're like, I don't really know much about Mormons. I kind of just think they're polygamists, and that's kind of what I know. Let's, in like a nutshell, explain what Mormons believe, and maybe a couple of those quote stranger, weirder things that people like remember, like from like the musical, the Mormon musical, like, oh, the magic underwear. Like people may have heard that before. Maybe let's kind of touch on some of those smaller things before we really get into the meat of the church.
Sure. So Mormons believe in the plan of salvation, which is baptism when you are 8 into the Mormon faith, and then following all of the tenets of the Mormon faith in order to get to the highest level of heaven, which is the celestial kingdom. And so that also involves paying tithing, following the word of wisdom, which is our dietary code, getting married in the temple, and being an active Mormon / Latter-day Saint. And therefore, with all of that, when you die, you'll be not only in the celestial kingdom, but with your family again, which is, one of the interesting things about the faith is that they believe you're, not only reunited with your family, but only the ones who remained faithful. And then you have, the possibility of kind of developing your own kingdom together as a family.
Right. And I think maybe people have heard this before too, is that you can actually become the god of your own universe, essentially, which is a man sort of situation. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So one of the things I will say, to give some props to the church too, and maybe we'll start with women, talking about women, but like, there is such a strong sense of female camaraderie with the Relief Society, is what it's called. And there's a lot of good that's done, and a lot of help and care and money and food given out to people who really need it within the church and even outside, which is beautiful, because the main thing of the church is all about service to others, which is beautiful and wonderful. So let's talk about women in the church first. And, or do you want to talk about men? Which one do you think is a better one to start with?
We can talk about women for sure. And I guess my experience was growing up, there was a very, very strong emphasis on motherhood. There was a very strong emphasis on domestic skills. It was very much kind of ingrained in us that the highest thing that we could do with our lives would be to stay home and rear children. I will also say, purity culture is a huge part of Mormon culture. And that was something else that was really just brought up constantly. Some of your listeners might be aware that Mormons follow a very, very strict dress code. And that is partially so that we, identify and stand out as Mormons. It's kind of, an oath that you take when you get baptized, and certainly when you get married, that you do wear what people call special underwear or magic underwear. And that is, a covenant that you take as a Mormon, that you will do this. You don't start wearing that until you do get married. And that is partially also so that you remain clothed with your shoulders covered, your collarbone covered, and your knees covered.
Interesting. I actually know Mormons who were wearing it before they were married. Is that part of it? That's
so this is one of the differences between men and women, is that women will typically wear it for the first time after or on the day they get married.
Okay.
Men will typically will always wear it when they go on their mission. When I was growing up, a man went on their mission when he was 19, and a woman could go on a mission at 21. And that's a part of the mission, is that you go through the temple for the first time. And so that's a covenant that you take when you go through the temple for the first time. So some men would be wearing it and not be married. Well, all men would, but yes, not women.
And so they would just continue to wear that after their mission. Okay. Yep. Okay. So let's keep talking about women. We'll talk about the temple too, because that's a big thing. Okay. So there is this huge emphasis, like you said, on being mothers and being married. People know pretty much that, Mormons get married very young because they are saving themselves for marriage, and it's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
But also, they want to have as many kids as they can. And that's just a big, big part of it, because essentially, like you said, you all want to be in the celestial kingdom together and do all of the different steps together, so be together. What did you feel as a girl growing up and as a young woman because you're starting to feel some rebellion towards like 12 or 13.
Yes.
What were you feeling about maybe being pushed into getting married early or all of it? Just what were your feelings?
I can say that the first thing that jumps out at me is because I did really want to have a career. I was very, very academic, very scholarly. I had lots of goals and ambitions as far as college and career goes. And that was one thing that, looking back, really stands out, is that I really did not have a lot of people who were supporting me. To be completely honest, I didn't feel it at the time. And looking back, because now I know how people outside of the church live and, rear children. And so I can with certainty say that people were not, my elders were not supporting me in pursuing these things. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will also say, there was a lot of talk and a lot of questioning of me if I would continue to work after I had children. And these are things that people were asking me when I was in high school, really wanting to make sure that even though I wanted to have a career and wanted to do these things, that I would, somewhere down the line, I suppose give it all up, which is kind of it's a weird thing to ask a teenage girl who has, lofty ambitions for her future, but that was of great concern to the grown-ups around me, for sure.
Right, right.
Mm.
Okay, so let's get into the boys. The boys do go on a mission earlier, and also for people who don't know what the mission entails, what is a mission?
Sure. And I can't wait to find out why it is that you're so well versed in, in Mormonism. Yes, this is a big part of our culture. And this is something that, as much as women were taught that, we are kind of the gatekeepers of morality, and boys' morality and rearing children, boys, what they had kind of pounded into them was the importance of serving a mission, which is a 2-year calling to proselytize. Some boys / men stay in the States, and some are sent overseas. As I was saying, when I grew up, boys went when they were 19. Today, they actually go when they're 18. So that's a fairly recent change, and also a big change as well. And yes, like I said, it's 2 years long. And when I was growing up, my absolute understanding, and I can back this up with plenty of, doctrine and statements made by church leaders, is that it was 100% compulsory. Like not an option. And certainly if I knew anyone who either chose not to go, first of all, that was very rare when I was growing up, or someone I knew who was older who hadn't gone, it was big stigma.
Really? So there was stigma if you're older and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go now.
No, I mean, I'm not really sure all the rules and everything, but basically, if you knew someone in your ward, could be a married man, could be a leader even, rare, but could be. It was always known that that man had not gone when he was younger.
Interesting.
And it was, whispers and, definitely, people knew, like I said, there was a stigma against it.
How did you feel about that? I mean, essentially, these kids are like out trying to get people to become Mormons. They're knocking on doors. We've all probably had a Mormon knock on a door and be like, hey, let me tell you about this book. Like, how did you feel when people weren't going?
I mean, growing up, this was just something that I completely took for granted. And, like I said, I can only think of a couple people I knew growing up who chose not to go. And it was, everybody in the congregation knew about it. And certainly I, thought, until I left, I was young when I left, but until I left, I definitely just knew that this is what they were supposed to do. And I suppose if someone had chosen not to go, I might have also definitely found it shocking, if not, maybe had judged it a bit. I know until I left, I certainly had ambitions to marry a returned missionary, is what we call it. And that was definitely, as far as women being the gatekeepers of men's morality, we were absolutely taught that you must only have ambitions to marry a man who has served a mission. And so I guess, and I certainly would have assumed that I would.
Yeah. So let's talk about when you actually were like, I can't do this anymore. How old were you? And how did that really start bubbling up? Because clearly at 13, you're starting to think about stuff. But like, when was this like, I got to go. I have to go.
Yeah, so I did begin to have questions and just a little bit of rebellion when I was 13. I definitely struggled with what we call the law of chastity, which is that I had a normal teenage libido, and I struggled a lot with like making out with my boyfriend and getting in trouble for that. And however, I would repent. We do have confessional as Mormons, and then I would be just very, very dedicated. But I kind of went back and forth all throughout high school. Which was very hard for my family because of how prominent they were in the community. But really what it came down to was these career ambitions that I had. And I, by all, there was all the proof in the world that I would go to, a very prestigious university, and that's absolutely what I wanted to do. I struggled with depression as a teenager and feeling trapped and wanting to, go out of state to college. And then I discovered that my parents wouldn't permit that.
Oh, wow.
And so where I am thinking I'm going to, go to like New York or Boston, teenagers always have romantic ideas about back east, at least from
So true. Me too.
yeah. I was all about the New York City fantasies.
Me too.
And so I start to, get my applications together. And then I realized, well, my parents just sat down and told me, like, don't go on. We're not going to, pay or support you to do anything but going to BYU unless you want to stay home and go to a local school. Well, I mean, that wasn't any more of an option for me than anything. I mean, that would probably be the last thing that I'd wanted to do. But then, I just realized all this time that I had been growing up saying these things about wanting to have these, these visions for my life and do something big. I don't know if people didn't take me seriously or that's just not what they wanted for me. However, I did end up getting into BYU. I went to the Idaho campus.
Okay.
And just from the very beginning, I just knew that this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. It was very strict. It was very rigid. It was, just everybody conforming. There's a very strong culture of surveillance, which some of your listeners may know at BYU. And it was I just felt watched constantly.
Wow.
I had struggled with depression in high school, and my mental health went from trying to manage it to just like plummeting down a hill like you can't believe. Like just in the danger zone big time. And self-harming, and that's just because I just realized I just felt trapped, and I just thought, is this what my life is going to be? And I couldn't get things together at all. My grades, I had been a remarkable student in high school, and I was like at risk of being on suspension because I wasn't passing classes.
Yeah.
And I think I stayed a year and a half, and I tried so hard. I was involved with student council and like very well known on campus and put in an effort. Right. But then what it came down to is just I was so miserable, and I just wasn't. I mean, I could barely function because I was just so depressed. Yeah. And I also realized then that I didn't feel like people weren't taking it seriously. And here I am, bordering on, self-destruction. Like I said, lots of self-harm, things that people should have seen, and they didn't. And I had to actually take it upon myself to put my foot down and say that I wasn't going to go back, and that I was so unhappy that I couldn't do it anymore. And devastated my community, devastated my family. And that's kind of what led to the end. Because, not only did no one support me, I actually got kicked out of my parents' house, had to just kind of fend for myself for a really long time.
Wow.
And I had clarity though, even as a 18, 19, 20-year-old girl, really, that, my life depended on getting out.
That is such a hard time. It is so hard to go from high school to college and whatever you were dealing with in high school into a college that you do not want to be at. And it is very, there is surveillance and you can get in trouble very easily.
Yes, and I did I look back and sometimes I don't even understand why I got in trouble and why people cared about very, very small things. And it was just very stressful constantly and just hard to think clearly. And, I'm from Arizona, this is Idaho, just even that was hard because I'd never even been in snow before. And like I said, instead of any of the elders around me trying to help, it just felt like people were just pushing harder and harder for me to conform and, getting in trouble. And just instead of anyone stepping in and being like, this girl needs help.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's a huge part of, unfortunately, that culture is that it is all about conforming, and it's about people making you feel shamed to not, go with the flow of everything, to not want all of this. Like, what's wrong with you because you don't want this? This is the most
Very
important
much.
thing you should need, you should want, and to want something different. So I'm so glad that you were younger when you did end up getting out. And What was kind of life like after? Did you go to a different college? Did you finish college?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I have also a master's.
Yeah.
I basically, just went out on my own, and I did, I wasn't supporting myself financially when I was going to BYU, but then I, got a job and got my own place, and I still don't know how I did it. I mean, adulting is hard enough for me, 20 years later, but just super, super determined. And, somehow my family, agreed, or my parents agreed to still support me with my tuition as long as I paid all of my living expenses, which I did. And I was honor roll, all of it. I met someone, we ended up getting very serious. I should mention that about 2.5, 3 years into this part of the story, where I'm actually going to ASU and again involved in all of these things, honor roll. I was, my school at one point paid for me to go to the United Arab Emirates and represent the college in a conference they had there. So definitely thriving in the way that I had always pictured myself to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, about 3 years in, I actually got disinherited for leaving the church. And so, and that's kind of, the next chapter of the whole leaving Mormonism story. Let's talk about it, I had stopped going for all of the reasons that I mentioned. And I was very serious with this man who was also going to ASU but happy, I don't even think I was going to therapy anymore. I was, and I love therapy, but I'm just saying I had gotten to the point where I wasn't getting, such regular treatment for my depression. But there was no way I was going to go back. It's just impossible. And so, my parents came to me one day and just said that I was, they can tell that I'm not interested in the faith anymore. And, they've tried to get me to go back, and it's obvious that I'm not going to, and that I was being, disinherited and cut off. And not only disinherited, but also not having access to the resources that I had previously to pay for my tuition.
Right.
And so
were they saying, we don't want to have a relationship with you? Or what exactly were they saying by disinheriting?
Yeah. You don't have access to these funds anymore, and you can figure this out on your own. And they did not say we don't want to have a relationship with you. However, I was devastated and furious
and scared too.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, definitely. And this was, both the beginning of me resigning from the faith, because I had been in it. Technically, like what they would call on the books or on the records is what we would say as Mormons. And so that is when I decided to have my name removed from the records, because I thought it's kind of evil that a church, encourages parents to do this to their child. Right. And then also from that point to today, it's been rocky at best with my entire family, if not long periods of estrangement, which that's unfortunately where we're at today.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. And that is kind of part of a lot of different religions, where they really will or cultures, they will just cut you off and
not look back is the crazy thing. I am very involved with the ex-Mormon community in Colorado and nationwide. And there are, I definitely want to say that I know some ex-Mormons whose family have been supportive and loving and accepting. That has not been my experience at all. But I know that it's important, because some people's Mormon story is that their family was awesome. So
yeah, that's great. And that's so good. I love that you're involved with helping ex-Mormons. We will absolutely get into there. I'm going to tell you my story real quick, so that you're not like, oh my God, but so that we can start talking about the bigger issues like abortion and marriage, all of the stuff. So my fun story. So my parents, okay, hold on. Let me start.
I'm so ready for this.
I know. So my mom is from New York, and they moved to LA when she was 10, and a Mormon missionary knocked on the door And my mom had been raised kind of, they lived in like Manhattan. So it was like a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Catholic people, a lot of like all the peoples, right? So like my mom was just kind of like everything. And my grandmother like talked to this missionary and was like, yeah, I think I might want to check this out. I like the whole no drinking thing. And this might be something really interesting for us to like look into. So my mom, so they joined. My grandfather didn't want to join. He was like, no, thanks. but like, if you girls want to like hang out, okay, sure. No one took it seriously. But they went to church, and my mom grew up in the church and ended up getting married at like 19, not to my father, but her first husband, got divorced, years later. That's when she did meet my dad, I think around 27. And my dad had not been raised Mormon. He had been raised Christian Science or scientist. And he was in a sort of, his father had just died kind of, or soon thereafter. And he was sort of in a growing phase, looking spiritually phase. Sure. And he landed in the Mormon Church as well. And they found each other and got married and had me. Now,
and were they married in the so were you born in the covenant? Were they married in the temple?
They were not married in the temple,
okay.
But they were definitely married. They were married within the church, not the actual church, but yeah.
Because if he was a convert, they might have had to wait or something. Okay.
So they have me. I'm in the records. Didn't know that. And I am absolutely not in this church whatsoever, because shortly thereafter, maybe around 2 or 3 for me, they're like, this is crazy. We're done.
Yay.
They're like, we gotta go. My grandma stays in it because she's sort of like sure, I'll go to church on like Christmas and Easter, but she's not really in the church. She has like missionaries come and see her, the Relief Society, they were lovely to her, especially when she was much, much older. Very helpful. So again, I will always just shout out to the Relief Society.
Sure.
So I just remember no one talked about it. I was raised to just be very spiritual, and I am. And I just remember thinking, like the Mormon people that I've met have been so nice. I've been there for Christmas. I actually sang at the church on a couple of different holidays when I was like an adult. Yeah. Like
that's unusual.
No, this is a very unusual story. Did not have any sort of qualms about the Mormons. Nothing. Because they're all really some great people. There are some not so great people too.
Yes.
But the ones that I had met have been lovely, right? Just lovely. So I don't think much about the Mormon Church at all. I really don't. And then I met a boyfriend of mine. We had a long-term relationship. We go on our first date, and I do not know he's Mormon. Right. I do know that we went to high school together, but I don't remember him. He remembers me, which I was a little notorious in high school.
Oh, girl. Love it so much.
Little famous. And we're sitting down, and I'm like, oh, what did you want to get to drink? And he's like, oh, I don't drink. I'm like, oh, and I'm not even joking. I actually think it's because he's sober. I'm like, oh, are you sober? Like, I was almost excited. Like, okay. And he's like, no, it's my religion. And he's like, no, I'm Mormon. And I'm like, oh, my grandma's Mormon.
Okay.
Again, I have no bad feelings whatsoever. None.
You're lucky.
I was so sheltered. Like, my parents really sheltered me on purpose. They're like, no.
Well, I've heard this is one of the hard things about growing up in it and then leaving, is that so many people who didn't grow up in it will say that to you. Oh, but they seem so nice, and that must have been your experience. But all the Mormons I know are great, which is really difficult. But yes, all right, go on.
It's but don't worry, I'm on your side, girl. I'm on your
okay.
side. So for the ones that were great to me, they actually continued to be great, and they were lovely. So no qualms about that. But long story short, I end up getting into this relationship with this person. And at the very, very, very beginning, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Wait, you're this, and then that's happened. And then I just, it was not a healthy relationship, first of all. And it's not fair to that person to talk about exactly what went wrong. But that's when I started really understanding the church and what it really was about.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting was that there were so many big sections, like the having your own universe as a man, that my mom hadn't even been taught.
Sure.
Like she really didn't know about a lot of this stuff, and she had grown up in it. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm hearing everything now. I'm getting all of the news, all of the stuff. And also all of the restrictions, like, it's fine. Like Sundays, okay, cool. Like we won't do anything. But sometimes it's like, shit, we just need groceries. Like it's Sunday. We've got to go. Or like I don't have a sister, but like if I had a sister, my sister's birthday is today. We have to go to her birthday. Like
that, I will say, would probably have been allowed. I mean, certainly people have birthdays, but in the Mormon Church, you celebrate as a family. And so
right.
I mean, you'd still just celebrate as a family, but certainly if you had siblings and family members, they could go to a birthday. But the thing is that you can't spend any money and you'd have to do it at the house.
And that's the thing. And that's exactly where and that's how it started. That's when all of the rules really started kind of becoming very hindering for us just even have a relationship. In general, right? So mind you, the sex thing was a whole other topic. And I was like, whoa.
I wish we could talk about that, because I bet, especially at what you guys were in your early 20s?
No.
Oh, okay.
We were in our early 30s.
Oh, so gotcha.
So I had practically multiple marriages because I'm a serial monogamist, and I'm like, wait, I'm sorry, you can't what?
Oh,
so, and again,
especially at that age.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. So the thing that I just remember, and again, because I'm not trying to throw this person down, the river or anything like that, is that there was a lot of manipulation.
Yeah.
And I had never felt so wronged about just being a normal woman, just a normal person living her normal life. I will say one thing. He was like, don't you just want to be meek? And I was like,
me? Oh, meek.
What?
Totally. Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm like, do you even know who I am?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of, hindrances. And the thing that made it such an unhealthy relationship was because obviously he was trying to stay incredibly devout. And I was like, you need to be with someone like you. I do not want to be in this relationship. And he just wouldn't leave, right? So it was very unhealthy. It eventually did end, thank God. But it was so, oh my God, angering to start learning more and more about how men treat women, how women are viewed in the church, how men are viewed in the church, how men are brought up, and what they're told that they're literal gods. Yeah. And they're going to be gods of their own universe.
It's so funny that stands out to people, because still to this day, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that weird to me, because having just grown up in it, I mean, of everything that, there is about Mormonism, I mean, I don't know. A lot of people do ask me about this, and that still hasn't stood out to me that people find that specific thing so shocking, but they do.
I do. Also, while we were together, the Mormon Church just started calling my number. They were just like on the phone with me. And they're like, you're in the records. You're in the records. And I was like, take me off the records. And
I bet you that he had asked them to.
I think something very sneaky was happening.
Yes.
His parents were also very devout. Very, very, very devout. So finally I got a hold of someone at a local ward to me. And I was like, please, this is my story. I am not in this. I've never been in this church. I don't want to be. Please take me off the records. And at this point, I'm so angry because of the manipulation that I'm experiencing in my relationship, that anything connected to that is just so deeply firing me up. And they finally did, which was great. But it's just interesting. And I listened to a lot of different podcasts and read a lot of different, chat rooms on like people leaving the church, people having like a sort of spiritual awakening to like, oh my God, I didn't know any of this stuff. I've been lied to all these years. There's so much maybe lying isn't quite the word always, but just information withheld.
Yeah, lots of gaslighting as
Yes.
well. A
Yeah.
ton.
So
More,
let's,
they're famous for gaslighting their members.
right. And I was
Mhm.
completely gaslit through my entire relationship. I
Yes.
will just say this, maybe this is a little damning, but I do believe that they breed narcissists. I actually read an
Okay.
article where he or she, oh gosh, I feel like it was a man, was in the church and he wrote anonymously. He's like, I am a sociopath. Like,
Oh,
I've been to
okay.
the doctor and that I am. And this
Mhm.
church breeds that. They
Yes.
breed narcissists.
Especially in men, because you're
Mm,
just, brought up to believe that you just have so much authority and power.
yeah.
And, I did see, I suppose, some narcissism or some very abusive control, especially happening, kind of on the local level with local leaders. And,
Mhm.
for instance, bishops. There's
Mm,
something that we, refer to in the ex-Mormon community as bishop roulette, because some people had bishops who, were just trying to help their community. And some people had bishops who were absolute monsters who just
mm,
wielded tons of, power and control over their members and over families. And who, I definitely would say that I was a victim of bishop roulette. I still
yeah.
have some fantasy or some revenge fantasies because I just think that he was just such, I guess, monster, or just, such a power hungry man who just, that was really his end game in all of my interactions with him, was to
Right.
just see what he could get people to do. And also just the sense that he really wanted people to listen to everything that he said, and
Yeah.
just, severe consequences if you didn't. And I happen to know that this ward, for whatever reason, has, consistently chosen men to be bishops
Mm,
who are this way. And I think it's because people are used to that type of environment.
yeah.
That's how your bishop was. And so now that you're bishop, you're going to do it as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk more into that. I mean, do you want to talk about your stories with this bishop or do you want
Yeah,
to share any of
sure.
that?
Yes, definitely. So what I will say was my experience was, like I said earlier, I did struggle, and I put that in quotes because I was taught that I was struggling with the law of chastity when I was doing things that were so healthy and normal. And
Mm,
it still makes me a little emotional because of just the shame attached to doing things that any teenager should do, or that it's healthy to do. I
yeah.
mean, and we're talking about making out, little bit of touching.
Mm,
I never had sex until I left the faith. I don't even think I had ever gotten naked with anyone, but the law of chastity is very strict. I
mm,
mean, you can kiss and get away with it, but you're meant to repent if you French kiss. You're, encouraged not to hold hands. And, certainly the farther you go, the more severe the penalties are. And really, out of all the rules that you can break, the law of chastity is, the most serious sin.
yeah.
And so I did things that were pretty normal for a teenage girl, but because of, the environment in which I was raised, I would be filled with guilt and terrifying levels of fear of what I had done and how it was going to, impact my salvation.
Right.
To the point that I did, I made out with someone once, and I couldn't even eat for days because I was
Oh my
so
gosh.
guilt stricken, and also just knowing that I had to go and confess. And especially my junior and senior year, I had a boyfriend who I was crazy about. And, we did things that any 17-year-old,
Yep.
couple would do. And, I went and repented kind of a lot.
Mhm.
And you can get to a point where it's not like you just go and do it and confess and you're forgiven. So in my bishop's eyes, you do it enough times, and each time you confess, the penalties are going to get more severe. And
Mm,
that was, in my case, I had gone and repented, maybe the third time in the year or something. And he's sitting there pounding his desk, telling me, how horrible I am and how, I broke my covenants. And at one point, I mean, we're talking, I had made out. And I think this is the thing. He started getting really specific, asking me what I had done.
Ooh,
and
that's
where
not
his hands
great.
were and where my hands were, and wanting to, I don't know if I can say this on your show, but
You can
like
say whatever
wanting
you
to
want.
know,
Yeah.
he wanted to know, like, for instance, if the guy I had made out with had an erection,
Oh my
which
God.
yeah. And like, if I could feel anything, on top of our clothes, because we had our clothes on,
Yeah.
and very specific, like, did you simulate sex? And, like if we use our tongue, and to the point where I am like sobbing because I'm just so humiliated. And yeah, like I said, he's pounding his desk and, saying that I'm some type of like predator. I'm a 17-year-old girl. Yeah.
You're a predator. You're a predator?
Mm-hmm.
This is why I get so angry at this church,
I know.
you guys. This is you're not a predator.
I know that, but it made me feel so gross. And it was, I mean, just the amount of shame and the humiliation. And, I was made to tell my parents what had happened. And, he was trying to disfellowship me from the church. And there's these little isolated incidents that happened to me when I was in high school. It wasn't even like I had really that much of a pattern of doing it, but he had told me, that there was going to be more consequences the next time. And there certainly were. Well, so if that's not traumatizing enough for a 17-year-old, now I'm meant to not take the sacrament on Sundays, which is, in front of your entire congregation. There's really only one reason that you don't take the sacrament, and that is if you're being punished, disciplined. So then eventually he undisfellowships me, refellowships me. But were you aware of something called Personal Progress Award?
No.
So it's basically the equivalent, we used to, until past couple of years, the teenage boys in Mormonism would go to Boy Scouts. And and you're meant to get your Eagle Scout. Right. Well, they had kind of an equivalent thing for girls. It's called the Personal Progress. And same thing, you get little medals and rewards the more that you do. And then in the end, in your senior year, you get the final personal progress. Mm-hmm. And because I was quite devout and, despite sinning and, breaking some rules, right. I had gone through, my entire high school years from 12 to 18 working on it. And then when I went my senior year to get the final award, my bishop refused to give it to me. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So I'm talking like years of work, and just to be told, and he said, like, I, value what you did, but, you haven't kept your covenants and you don't get it.
Were you just like, fuck you? Like,
no, I was unconsolable, cried and he, didn't care. And then, and everybody was, asking me like what was going on. And I'm just like, I'm not getting it, I guess.
Wow. Mm-hmm. The thing that's so wrong about all of this, and I know you know this, is just, this is such humiliation. It's brainwashing. You're just being told how bad you are so that more men in this church can have control over you. And that's really what this is. This is all about control.
He was pissed. Like he personally, offended by what I had done. And I forgot to mention, it just came back to me. I had already been accepted to BYU because I was a senior. He contacted the school. Mm-hmm. And told them everything, and was basically like, I don't know if, can we let her go? And I mean, to their credit, if we can say that, they did tell him, well, she's confessing and, repenting and trying to do the right thing. So and they did let me go, for better or worse, because, that's, maybe I'd been better off if they hadn't. But this is just my little story of this bishop who, sought to, put this amount of power and control over me and do all of these things to punish me for something that was so normal. My bishop and my parents and my elders and my church leaders, like, no one should have even known that I was making out with boys, but this was public knowledge. And he really went out of his way to kind of destroy me too for what I had done.
Let's talk about some stuff in the news right now with Roe v. Wade and
Mhm.
how bishops are telling, what if you do get pregnant and you're in the Mormon Church? What are they telling girls to do?
Yeah, I would love to talk about this. I definitely consider myself to be a pro-choice activist. I have been ever since I left the church. There was something of, I really was always on fire about, choice politics. And I mean, for one thing, sex outside of marriage is forbidden. Should you choose to have sex and then get pregnant, if you're out of wedlock, you are strongly encouraged to give the baby up for adoption. If you should choose to keep it, there are some consequences to that. One of which being, let's say you're 17 and decide to keep your child, you would then no longer be permitted to go to Sunday school within your age group, or to go to what we call the mutual with your age group. You would be required to start going to Relief Society with the fully adult women.
Wow.
And I do want to point something out, because when it comes to Mormonism, people are so often like, well, I heard this and I heard that. But not only was this my experience, but I still study Mormonism. And I had the reason recently to go and actually look this up in their official handbook for leaders. And this is what it still says to this day. So this is official policy within the church.
That's current. Yeah, I heard that too. I can't even imagine having to give your baby up for adoption. I mean, what if you're with your partner and
Then the couple, they would be encouraged to get married.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just so backwards to me for the sake of their rules. The other thing that's been a big, huge, topic is homosexuality, which, listen, there are gay people in the church, kids. There's a lot of them. They're just not all out, and the repression that being homosexual in the church, there's so much repression, and conversion therapies within like Christianity in general, certain aspects of it. I feel, and you had said this when we talked before, that that's really kind of what's breaking this church down. Yeah. And I'm glad. I mean, sorry, that sounds really harsh, but I'm glad that it's being put on spotlight, because this is crazy. So what are your thoughts on all of that? And like, kind of what was it like growing up? Did you know like gay kids that you were like, yep, you're gay? Like, I know you are.
Absolutely not. No. I was raised to be extremely intolerant of homosexuality, and to consider it to be a heinous like crime against humanity, and like they compared it to, I don't even know if I want to say it. Like, they would compare it to like bestiality. And yes. And these were the things that we were told. I mean, this isn't church policy, but seminary, we go to what's basically the equivalent of catechism, but for Mormons. And I had multiple seminary teachers who said that the AIDS crisis was a punishment for the gay community. And so I know now that there were kids in my high school who were gay, because I know that some people have come out. I will say this, and this might blow your mind, that there was a couple boys in my high school who, I know one of them was a bit effeminate, and the rumors started, as in all high schools. And one of the rumors started that this particular boy was gay. So much so that it got back to our principal, who calls him in to interrogate him about it. Wow. We're talking, this was considered to be something that you could be punished for, that your principal could ask you. And not like, oh, hey, do you like need support? No. Like, it's been rumored, that you're gay. Is this true?
Yeah.
So definitely, my experience was just being horrified by it. That being said, though, as soon as I decided to leave, I'm living at this point in Tempe, Arizona, and, going to ASU, and I met gay people just kind of immediately. I think my first flatmate that I had when I left the church was bisexual. And you just suddenly throw it off and just realize so quickly, just like I realized I couldn't stay Mormon, I just realized so much of what they had taught was absolutely wrong, and that these are just nice people, and that I wasn't horrified by it at all. But I do know, one thing I struggle with today is that a lot of the Mormon people I know tried to put it out there as though they're so tolerant. But that's not how I was raised at all. And, I think really things started going south for them with Prop 8 and it being discovered that the church had funded, the anti-Prop 8 campaign. And, a lot of people grow up Mormon, but also within society. I didn't have that experience because of, going to all church schools, but I do think that it's just something that you can't get away with anymore because so many people, with the growing acceptance of gay individuals, everybody, knows somebody and you just, it's not something that you can, really teach anymore. However, they still do. I mean, church policy is you can't come to church with your partner. Gay couples can't get married. You can be kicked out of the church, which happens all the time if you act on homosexual feelings. So I don't really get where they get this tolerance thing because still, to this day, it's not allowed. It's something that they punish people over.
What is the punishment?
So first of all, basically the official church doctrine is that having a feeling isn't wrong. Similar perhaps to being a teenager and wanting to make out with your boyfriend. Like it's not the urge to be with someone of the same sex that is wrong. What's wrong is acting on it.
Wow.
Yes. And so if you do, I mean, similar things than what happened with me, you have to go and confess. And then it's kind of up to your bishop to, determine what the punishment is. And, that could be anything from, okay, now you're forgiven, don't do it again, to being disfellowshipped like I was, to, having to go to weekly meetings with your bishop, encouraged to go to a support group, and then all the way up to being excommunicated if you don't stop.
Yeah, it just feels like they're kind of losing holds, they're losing hold of people. And what I thought was always interesting, and maybe it's changed since, but what I always thought was interesting was that I was told like it's the fastest growing church. And I'm like, I know that's not true.
Well,
they're like, no, we have all the members. I'm like,
two things I'll say is this is very similar. It's also one of the most racist mainstream religions that I know.
Yeah, we can talk about that too.
And this it's very there. Okay, so and then I also heard that growing up, and the thing that is so important to keep in mind is that the church does not publish or advertise their numbers. Even today, because so many people have left, still no one knows exactly how many people have left because the church keeps that confidential. But I mean, it's interesting because they want to go out there and publicize that they're the fastest growing religion without any proof, but they don't want to say anything about that, the fastest dwindling religion, except just that saying that, we can't show our numbers. Our numbers don't indicate that, but what numbers, like where?
Yeah, exactly. With the racism thing, it was, I think, 1979 where they finally started allowing Black people in the church.
So
is that right?
It's now referred to as the priesthood ban. And so you could get baptized, but a Black man could not hold the priesthood. If anyone doesn't know, that's, the power that men in the religion have to do different blessings and ceremonies and healings and to be led, by your intuition and to guide your family. And so a Black man didn't have access to that. And also a Black family, therefore, could not be sealed in the temple, which is, I mean, as most people know, that's a really big thing for Mormons, is that you're an eternal family. And so African Americans, didn't, Black people all over the world didn't have access to those blessings.
So do they have access now?
Yeah. So, and in 1978, they did lift that, which, I mean, if you need any other proof that it's not necessarily, God's one true church, I would think it would be that, because we're talking about decades behind, the trend as far as civil rights in America goes. I mean, they're pretty much the last mainstream establishment to, lift some of these racist policies. Right. And you would really hope that a church that's so directly led by God would have been, on the forefront of the movement. And the same exact thing goes with gay members in the gay community. Absolutely. Why are they still holding on to this? And especially considering all the harm that it's doing to people.
And like what I think is kind of interesting too, like the beginning, this church hasn't been around that long. It's been around for like 150 years, I think.
And so it started in the 1830s. So
okay.
You do the math. I'm not, that's not my strong suit.
We're about 100 years. So, So, but it started during like the spiritual era in the United States where we had people coming up with all kinds of different religions and all kinds of spiritualism, including, mediums and all kinds of things like that. So it was a very interesting moment to sort of capitalize on God.
Curiosity. I think people's curiosity about God and religion, and also a certain zeal or enthusiasm about kind of experimenting with new ideas, which is something that I think is pretty cool about this time, and that's why people were experimenting with new ways of doing religion, and certainly why I think Joseph Smith was able to get a stake in the ground.
Exactly. And that's a very interesting whole story with him. We don't have enough time to get all into that because that's just a whole thing. But I mean, he's an interesting character, very influential in what the religion became. But if anything, what is sort of the most important thing that you learned about yourself because of this religion?
Ultimately, I got to the point where I'm very, very independent and self-reliant. And I would not. I will definitively say I would not be as self-reliant as I am today had I stayed in it. And, going along with that, just what I'm capable of overcoming, because leaving, really left me without anything. And I was able to build a life that I'm extremely proud of today and that I think I should be. Yeah. And, doing it, I had people come in and out of my life who played important roles, but, ultimately figuring things out on my own is, a gift that's given me so much that, benefits me every single day.
Absolutely. I'm just so glad that you were listening to yourself, even at such a young age, to know something just doesn't feel right here, because it is so hard for so many people when they're in such a tight community and you're really being told this is how it is, this is how it is. And we've said this a couple times too, the belief that this is the one true church. In fact, for those of you, who have never been to this church, on Sunday, they're, or what is it, like once a month, people get up and like give their testimony of why they know this church is true. And sometimes, I've been to those things, and sometimes for me, I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Like what they just said, that's lovely. They feel it. They're great. And sometimes it just felt like they were begging to feel it. And I'm going to convince myself outwardly to you and myself at the same time that this is the one true church, because I need it to be, because of either doubt or whatever was coming up for them. But it's, you got to just listen to your gut. And I'm so glad that you did. And I'm so glad that you're helping others who have left the church to, just kind of let your brain breathe and let everything kind of straighten out and get all the facts. Because again, you've been gaslit for so long that what seems, I used to say this a lot, like, I would look at the sky and be like, the sky is blue. And they would be like, no, it's green. Like, no, it's blue. I'm literally looking at it. It's blue right here. I'm seeing, no, it's green. I'm like, oh my God, it's crazy making. And there's a lot of crazy making within this church. And again, it's not every single one. It's not every single person, but it is quite a few. And it's just important to have support if you're trying to leave. What places can people go check out if they're trying to leave the church or have left and they need support?
Oh, cool. I think the thing that I would say, I am also a big podcast person. And you know what? My favorite podcast and the one that's helped me the most is called Mormon Stories podcast. It's put on also by an ex-Mormon with a also interesting faith transition story named John DeLynn. They are, 1,800 episodes in at this point. They have episodes on everything from people's faith transition stories to the history of the church to, abuse within the church, Mormonism and narcissism. And it's a very empowering, positive look at how people are thriving after Mormonism. And, which happens to be the name of the nonprofit that I volunteer for, is called Thrive After Religion, and which he happens to be a board member of. So I would say go and check that out, Mormon Stories podcast.
Awesome. That will be in the show links. So you can just go the show notes, go check the link out. But yeah, I've actually listened to, that was the podcast that I listened to when I was really struggling in my relationship. I was like, oh my God, it was really nice. And I'm not even Mormon, but it was so nice to hear these stories and to be like, oh, cool. This crazy making, all of this gaslighting. Yeah. I'm not alone. So,
yeah, and you aren't alone. If anyone's listening, there's a huge ex-Mormon community today, and I am just absolutely honored to be a part of it. And if you even don't have access to that, there's thriving online communities as well that are very, very supportive, that have made a big difference to me, especially in the past 5 years or so. There was none of this around when I left, but today it is really great that so many people have decided we're all gonna band together over this.
Awesome. Well, tell people how they can find you.
The best thing would be to go to my Instagram, which is Janice Formichella. Hopefully you can put that in the show notes as well, because I know that's not, the easiest name to spell. And then, first and foremost, I'm the host of X-Files podcast. You can also find us on Instagram, and you can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And that's a podcast about breakups, broken hearts, and moving on.
Yes, you guys, I was on the podcast. Was I on or did you come on my podcast?
I came on yours, but we are going to, please stay tuned, because Jackie's going to come on and be a guest co-host for a number of episodes. So I'm excited to cross-promote that with you.
It's going to be so much fun. Her podcast is amazing. Seriously, if you're going through a breakup, go check that out right now. Go add her, go follow her. Thank you, Janice. I'm so glad we got to chat about all of this.
I feel energized. As you can see, this is something I'm still so passionate about, 20 years later. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it and tell my story.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Remember, sharing is caring. Make sure to rate the podcast and leave a review. We really rely on this to help get the podcast out there. Also, make sure to watch the video version on YouTube at That Girl the Podcast.